Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Our next guest today, we have Liam and Chris from Thoth Witchcraft. We have interviewed them previously on our other channel. Chris, we haven't, so this is a treat for us today because we've got Chris with us as well. So we've got two for the price of one, as they say, and I will introduce them now. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you, Chris. Obviously, we've met.
Getting used to this live streaming.
You're getting used to it. Yeah, I saw you were doing some yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, trying.
So, firstly,
we were trying.
You're trying. So, firstly, can I ask you to anyone that's not familiar with your company, can you just give an outline of who you are? Obviously, I've introduced what you're called, but tell us again. Let us know who you are and what you do, basically, if you will, please. Whichever one.
Go on, Liam. You're the professional.
Okay, I've got to do this, but I always end up getting stuck doing the intros. So the company that we own is called Thoth, which is named after the Egyptian god of wisdom and magic. Essentially, we chose that name because it's bland enough that we can incorporate more than just witchcraft. So pretty much any form of occultism or magic essentially is what we aim to do, is to help people on their paths for exploring that. We do run quite a lot of events and things like that, but most of what we do tends to be mentoring people. So when people approach us normally for witchcraft consultations, they'll either ask us to help them do something or learn a skill or, master an ability, and then we kind of take things from there. Compared to what most other people are doing, they tend to either create just events and you don't quite know what you're going to get until you go there, and it's kind of a little bit of all sorts, or they tend to make like schools and curriculums and things, and you're kind of studying what they think you should study, whereas with us we tend to try and tailor everything to whoever comes our way, essentially. And various people, all sorts of weird people end up coming to us and asking us for help on their, I suppose,
weird and wonderful
journey.
People.
Weird and wonderful. We'll stick with that.
Okay. So when you say, what is it I'm just going to ask you questions that I've probably asked you before. So what is it, your workshops that you do, what is it you're teaching people? You do a whole genre of different things, don't you? So what is it people can come to you and ask for help for?
Anything that involves magic, essentially. When we put on events, what we try to do is look at what else is out there, whether it's a psychic fair or an esoteric festival or occult conferences. And if we're not happy with what we're seeing and we think things should be done a different way, what we try to do is our version of that.
Yeah.
But all of those things are really just designed to kind of be meet and greets for people to meet like-minded individuals that are on a similar path or share similar interests to them. What we then do is, after we physically meet people, or people approach us online through things like this, is that we then take them and normally have a private conversation as to what exactly is it you want, and then I suppose negotiate terms on us giving them what they want. So obviously when it comes to witchcraft, because that's what we're probably most famous for currently, people will come to us because they want to learn how to make spells work and things like that. Some people will come because they want something specific. Other people will come because they want to learn, so say, everything. So it's our job then to take them down a kind of strange rabbit hole to basically as far down that rabbit hole as they're prepared to go. So we've got quite a lot of students and people that we mentor that are on lots of different paths. Some people are interested in witchcraft, some people ceremonial magic, some people rather unusual religious practices, that kind of thing. And then obviously a lot of people who are just coming because they want the services of a witch. So they just want to hex their ex, or they want to, be a millionaire or something like that, and they think that, let's cast a spell to make that happen. So we've then got to explain how that works.
There's so much more to it, though, isn't there? Because
a bit unusual, but
like I said, it's not like you do one thing, you do a whole range of different things. Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Oh,
so
God. Go on.
Your witchcraft shop. So what does your
still
shop
there?
offer?
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, sorry. I said your witchcraft shop. 'Cause you've actually got a shop, haven't you? What do you actually offer with that?
So what we try to do is kind of like
Do
Ian was
it.
saying, create our own version of it that makes things work more efficiently, shall we say. So, you know, you can get, say, smudge sticks on every esoteric or metaphysical shop on the internet, whereas ours are grown, cut from a tree I've been cultivating for 20 years. So, like, it's one of those where we add that authenticity back into what's going on, like, and then we try and do things that people haven't thought of yet. So, you know, recently we launched a range of magically spun yarns. So by magically spun, I mean that each one is spun under a planetary, one of the classical 7 planets, and imbibes that energy into the yarn itself, and then you can use that for all the things you would normally use, but add that extra layer that you wouldn't normally get from just buying it from Hobbycraft. Do you get what I mean? So yes, it's kind of like that. So we sell all the items, I guess, that all of the witchcraft shops sell. They're just different, I guess.
More
is the best
bespoke.
way to put it. Yeah. So we try and use the skills that we've got in order to kind of elevate it to a new level, I guess. But keeping within the fact that actually all of these should be for doing it. Like is the thing I suppose Liam was always trying to point out. It's like not thinking about it, not reading about it. Go and discover it for yourself. Find the way that works for you, and keep pushing it until you find it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And for us, that's what it's for. Like, although we sell, our shop isn't our kind of priority, if that makes sense. Teaching tends to be our priority, just because there's so much stuff on the internet nowadays that you just get lost in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands probably of blogs, all selling the same information over and over again that's come from the same handful of books, mostly Scott Cunningham, but that have that kind of feel, and what we're trying to do is kind of add that new layer, that new flavour.
And you also organise you have your own different take on events, like you said as well. We've just lost Liam.
Liam might come and go. He's been having technical issues most of this week, which made yesterday very interesting.
We had a couple of those yesterday. They kind of come in, went, or we lost sound, or they froze on the screen, and they were halfway through talking. Oh no, he's come back now. They were halfway through talking, and their mouths stopped moving, but the sound was still there.
We got to the end. We did one on divination at the end of yesterday, and literally it was just robot Liam. Everything was like,
There's a lot of stuff going on here at the moment. I think Chris gave you the really nice answer to the question, whereas I tend to give the rude answers to the question. So if you want my answer to that question, and I don't know whether your viewers would agree, when you go to a witchcraft shop, such as some of the ones in Glastonbury or certain things, they're like gift shops with a lot of pentagrams and crap. So what they are is basically I like the idea of a little love spell kit. I'll give that to my friend at work for Secret Santa. Or, oh, that's a pretty candle. Or, oh, I like that bag. It's got a pentagram on it. There's no real magical practice involved with it. So what we tried to do is attract the little magpies that seem to want to learn witchcraft or magic, or have an interest in it at least, and then try and show them and persuade them to practice some real magic. So we're probably the only witchcraft shop around that I'm aware of, which when people come through the door or come to an event and say and pick something up, we say, don't buy that, make your own version of it. We'll show you how to do it. Let's go out the back, because we're more interested in really teaching than hawking a load of stuff with pentagrams on. And the problem is, I think, with the industry, it is all about the aesthetic of it and prettying things up as opposed to the actual magical practice. When you look back over time, it didn't matter what it looked like most of the time, is whether it worked. Nowadays, it seems that in a witchcraft shop, people are buying things, little spell kits and stuff like that, not expecting them to work, just buying them because they think they look pretty or cool. And we're trying to take people away from that and actually put the craft back into magic, as opposed to it just being a craft, you know, the knitting or something like that, which you do as a pastime. It's got to be something that you're impacting your life. So that's why we're so big on education.
Leading on from that, we have a question. We actually have a question actually about that. Deanna wants to know, is it face-to-face or online teaching you do? Obviously, at the moment, a lot of things are online.
Yeah.
So can
at
you
the
answer
moment,
that question for us?
At the moment, yeah, which is what yesterday was about. We'd got booked for Gloucester. We booked it last year. Like, it's literally, and then as it's got closer and closer, we've just gone, how are we going to do this? Because people can't be there. And then, you know, we tried it out to see whether or not, because everybody else seems to be doing it, let's give it a go. So we did a mixture of kind of filming that we did last weekend, kind of pre-recorded stuff mixed with kind of a live podcast that we did in the morning, and some apparent workshops that turned into Q&A sessions, as things do when they're on live. But yeah, so normally it's face-to-face. We don't shy away from clients, because obviously the thing is we have quite a nice following now that's kind of international. So we can't zip over to the US all the time, or zip over to France.
Get on the broomstick.
We'd like to. So most of our teaching is done face to face. Obviously, if you take any kind of apprenticeship up with us, and actually going through a mentorship program, that varies. So that might be that I speak on the phone every week, or we meet every other week, but we talk 2 or 3 times a week. Like, it really depends on what the client wants, really, or the mentor apprentice wants. So
can you tell us a bit more about that? What's involved with that? With the mentorship stuff?
With the mentorship program.
Yeah, can you tell us more about that, please?
That depends on which one of us you get, but essentially.
Okay.
Essentially, I'll go through my method, and then Liam can go through his. So essentially what we'll do is it'll start with an initial conversation, and we'll kind of, often that includes some kind of scratch testing, so testing how they can deal with different kinds of energy. And then if they say, actually, I want to go down a more controlled path, like a more, a proper mentorship program rather than just a one-off spell, then at that point we'll talk about how we can help where they're at, and then design something around them. So it really depends on what they come to us with and how that develops. But essentially, we will, send them away with homework, do tests on them, that sort of thing, to actually get them to the levels that they want to get at. But it starts initially with a conversation of saying, where do you want to be? And then pushing them until they get to it. And then if it's Liam's client, then probably push beyond that until they're crying. But, that's Liam. So go on, Liam, your turn.
Okay, man, that's unfair.
Right, we have crying at the end. I can't believe you just said
so
that.
Back in the day, right? Everything would be face to face, and you'd be mentored in the form of an apprenticeship. There was no internet or anything like that. There was no real correspondence courses. You may have watched Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. Didn't really work out like that. And basically what we've decided to do is that originally I think we only wanted to take people on face to face, the traditional way, and guide people along a process. So someone would approach us and say, well, I want to master this ability, or I want to learn this or that. And we would design a curriculum, normally in the form of a little quest, or not necessarily workshops, but projects that they would keep coming back to us, kind of like an NVQ, I suppose. And then we would basically set them homework and stuff and get them to the point where they were mastering whatever ability they wanted to master. What we did find was so many people approached us from quite far away that we can't really necessarily reach, that we thought we'd try and do an online version of that. So the people that we can physically meet, Normally they'll just approach us at an event, because if they can get to our events, and our events are always places we physically travel to, we can pretty much do a face-to-face training. That'll depend completely on what you want. It's difficult. However, the online training that we're doing, we formalized. So what we did was launch our Patreon mentorship. So we had several tiers basically. So tier 1, which was £3 a month, not very much. You basically just get access to us on a regular basis. So if you sign up to that, we would create content specifically for you and check in with what you're doing and recommend make recommendations based on our experience and what we think would be, work out better for you based on a project that you choose. The tier 2 was, I think, £5 a month, which was all about people with businesses. So people that want to do professional magic, whether it's training psychics, that kind of a thing, but we go more into the business side of things. And then tier 3 is the advanced stuff, which is what I can't talk about. So anyone that wants and is serious about training, we offer an online training program for £3 a month. It's not very expensive, and it will be the real deal. However, much like traditional witches, the onus is very much on you. We won't be providing you paperwork and multiple choice questions and answers, and we won't be giving you some crappy print your own diploma on A4 paper. What it'll be is you saying, I want to master this, or I'm interested in, say, witchcraft, or that kind of thing. I want to know what happens after you die, something like that. We will say, okay, we'll assess you based on your current ability level, and we'll design things to push you further. Basically like personal trainers, I suppose, of the magical world.
Yeah, I think that's the best analogy, really.
Yeah.
Personal trainer, just keep pushing, like I said, until you cry.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily that. I mean, I think Chris likes to make me out to be the bad one, and it's not that. It's that I really like people to push themselves further and further. And other people, I do have to take a step back sometimes and say, okay, I want them to get this ability, but they might not necessarily want that. I've always struggled with that. So I'm not harsh, but I am one of those people, as you can tell, says it how it is. The good thing, of course, is that if you do go on the online or the in-person mentorship, you can choose who you want to mentor you. Much like you choose a personal trainer, you don't have to be lumbered with one or the other. You could even have both sometimes.
Deanna said, could you contact me regarding teaching, please, as in regard to being a student? So she's in the comments, so we will put the link up. Tell me what the link is and I'll do it now.
Just put it at thothwitchcraft.com and go to the mentoring page and contact us through there.
I will type that in as we speak. Thoth Witchcraft.
Or there's the Witchcraft Live Facebook, either one. And we'll find
there's a Facebook Witchcraft Live Facebook group we created a little while ago for people to ask really, really, really simple questions. So the things that most of the time people are embarrassed to ask because they think is too simple.
Okay, and forgot what I was going to say now. Brain just went blank.
Fine.
So how long have you been doing this for?
Oh. Are we giving the honest answer? Or
I don't know. What current edition of the universe are we on?
Yeah.
It depends whether you want the mundane answer or whether you want the strange metaphysical witchy answer, I guess.
I think we're starting to get used to your metaphysical answers, Liam.
Well, Chris can give you one of his then.
So I've been practicing since the beginning of my teens, and by that I mean probably 10, 11. But that, like I said, that's this lifetime. So that's 20 years on this lifetime. Depends on how deep you want to go, really. Let's just say we've been training for multiple lifetimes. This isn't just the latest one. So yeah, I'm going to stop there.
No, that's fine. I totally get that. I totally get that.
We really like our vocation.
What I was going to ask you about, you did touch upon earlier, you did mention about divination. Said you were doing was it a workshop on that yesterday?
Well, we were trying.
You said you were trying. So can you just briefly touch upon what is divination for anyone that doesn't know what it is, and
yeah, fine.
Give a little bit of an explanation and so on, because some people that are watching, they won't know what that is. So just use this time to like try and educate people on certain things. I know you can't, there's a lot more to it. There's not just a brief answer to anything. I know that.
We can give you the brief answer if you want. The brief answer is basically using magic to answer questions. Traditionally, it was using magical means or supernatural means to answer questions about the future. So, prophecies, that kind of thing. Nowadays, it's basically any form of answering questions using magic, whether that be crystal balls, tarot cards, gazing into the future, summoning up a spirit to ask what happened back then, or what's going to happen in the future, or what's currently going on over the other side of the world. So all of the various things in magic that are used for asking questions, that basically falls under divination normally. It's just one of those things that it used to be referred to, or it used to mean finding out information of the future. Now people just use it to find out any form of information, I suppose. So because it's quite a huge big umbrella, you could be using
I was going to say, there's so many things, isn't there, that you could, it is like not one simple, it's this or it's that. It's so many different things. What are the
like Miss Cleo says, if you have the questions, we have the answers. That's divination. It's just how you're going to find those answers out and what tools you're going to use, if any, to find those answers out.
What are the most common things that people come to you for help, basically? What are the most common things people will ask you for help for?
It changes all the time. So it's kind of, Liam likes to use the phrase, with the GPs of the magical world. It's one of those kind of like, to be honest, as I work in a GP surgery, I can attest to the fact that it is exactly like that. Where like you'll go to a show somewhere or somebody else's event, and you'll have like an ailment of the day kind of situation. So you'll have like, everybody's got a UTI today, that sort of thing. Whereas, and that's kind of how it works. So it's, there was that one in Bristol where everybody in Bristol seemed to all of a sudden be doing freezing spells. And we must have seen about 8 clients that same day, all with exactly the same problem, which is they must have all been reading the same blog, but it was literally all like, well, I've done it, but how do I get rid of it now? Like, I've got this person frozen in my freezer, like not literally, like, I've got this person frozen in my freezer. I've done the spell. Now, how do I get rid of the remnants of this spell? I think clearly it hadn't been covered in whatever blog they'd pulled it from, or, Scott Cunningham book he'd pulled it from. And then it literally left over this, block of ice. Now, obviously, the answer was the same to pretty much all of them, which was, if it's ice, return it to a water source that's ideally going away from you. So because obviously in those sorts of spells, there is no leftover that's going to damage the ecosystem kind of thing. You're talking a bit of ice and maybe a bit of paper with somebody's name on. It was a case of, find a body of water that's flowing away from you. That's whether or not you flush it down the toilet, or you go out and make a special trip to respectfully get rid of it in a river, or any body of water that's moving away from you, because you're getting rid of this person, hence the freezing spell. But literally, you get days like that. So you get a whole day that's that. Most of the stuff, I suppose, that comes to us, though, is normally when spells have gone wrong, where they've done something and they don't know how to fix it. And we don't mean like curses or whatever. Like, I mean literally where they've done a spell, they've had the effect that they wanted, and then they can't seem to stop the effect, or it's carried on, or it's gone sour because they've left a spell going for too long. I get a lot of honey jars who do practice.
When you say left the spell going too long, just to pick up on that, sorry.
Yeah.
What do you mean by left a spell going too long? What do you mean by that?
It burnt in the oven.
Yeah.
The smoke detectors.
Smoke detectors off, and you're kind of like, oh shit. Like, running around wafting detectors everywhere, like that sort of situation.
Okay.
Where you
magical version of that, I suppose.
Yeah, it's reached its peak, and then you, rather than stopping it at that point or disposing of it, you've left it going, and it particularly if, like I say, the perfect example for that is a honey jar spell. Now, honey jars it's a hoodoo practice. Google, you'll find hundreds of them on YouTube. But a honey jar spell is normally used for sweetening the deal. And the problem with a lot of hoodoo practitioner is that it's designed to connect to people. So you're connecting to that person, putting a line of communication that's stabilized. So if you don't close that when you've reached its peak, you can then start to have the negative start to come back down that connection because it's overcooked, it's burnt, and the smoke is now wafting towards you. That's the sort of thing I mean. So where it's gone past its peak, and then it's starting to turn sour.
And the freezing spell, you mentioned that was mentioned to me on that was brought up on a live the other week. So anybody that doesn't know what a freezing spell is and what it's used for, can you just explain that as well, please, if you don't mind, as you've mentioned it, just so people understand what you're talking about?
Sure. I'll try and keep it brief.
It's all right.
It's essentially when someone wants to freeze the influence of a person in their life. So it's a case of, they've got, Martha at work is not very nice to me, or my ex still keeps contacting me, those sorts of things. And people use freezing spells for that. So what they want to do is freeze the influence of that particular person. And it's a simple spell. I think it went something along the lines of writing a person's name on a piece of paper or whatever, and then freezing it in ice. So putting it in an ice, tearing it up and putting it in an ice cube tray, freeze it in water, or you put it in a jar with water and freeze and that's the idea, is that it freezes their influence on you. But like I said, lots of people have got these frozen names in the freezer going, well, what do I do with them now? The blog didn't say.
Yeah.
That's mad though. So do you have to do that? Go on, Liam, sorry.
I was just going to say the work varies considerably. I think because we split it between clients that we're mentoring and then people that are coming from consultations. Consultations is literally just you were wanting to speak to us one time to fix a problem. Normally those people aren't interested in learning magic. They're mundane, quote unquote, people. So they want to hire a witch to do something for them, essentially. So the last 3 I had was one of them wanted her ex-husband to fall in love with her so that she could steal all his money. That was one. I've got that worked out very well. I've currently got him actually, because that worked out so well. She gave me the doll back. I'm not going to open it because it's currently covered in dog shit because she's finished with him now. But anyway, so that was one. Another one is essentially a Reiki practitioner, because it's always the Reiki practitioners, ended up trying to clear something and upset the thing that currently lives there. It doesn't respond particularly well to Reiki, and couldn't quite understand why this system of Reiki that they were taught cannot shift this thing that's currently been living in that place for a considerable amount of time. When it comes to like the mentorship, obviously that's ongoing. So people are essentially paying us to help them along their journey. So I've got one person that wants to learn professional witchcraft. Got another person who's got a blockage on a past life. So they were initiated into some kind of magical society and are trying to retrieve the memories from that. However, every time they try to do it with past life regressionists or anything like that, there's a block and they get kind of booted back. So we're breaking through that boundary. There's, you know, when it comes to the mentorship, that's the problem. It's what your paradigm is. So essentially we work from the position that anything's possible, but you have to ask us, can you help me do this? We're not going to turn around and say what is possible and what's not possible. You've got to, the limit's your imagination. Whereas with clients for the consultations is normally they've got a problem and they think, oh, magic can fix my problem, which of course it can, but it's up to us to basically explain how to go about that and very often help them do it. It's very short term, normally within an hour or so. 15 minutes, 10 minutes is our shortest consultation I think we've ever done. But it's just asking someone that's got more experience than you how, you know, what their input is essentially. And of course we've got access to a lot of things. So if you are trying to do something that's considered advanced or something that's well beyond your ability, we've not only got our own, you know, experiences, I suppose, power, but also the fact that, you know, we've got access to resources that a lot of other people might not necessarily have. So again, it's one of those things. It's consultation. We're consultants, I suppose, is the easiest way of putting it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you sound more like you do a lot of that. I just out of interest, because I've come across this, not me personally. When you were saying about someone having a blockage from a past life,
or a future life.
Yeah. For anyone I've spoken to, regards to this, because I was trying to give, I couldn't give advice because I didn't know how and I didn't know where to help, you know, how to help them. But I was told.
Referrals.
Say again, sorry.
I said we take referrals.
So it was a case of I was told every answer I was given was, oh, past life regression, that's what will fix it. That's what will help. And that was the only, I know you're both shaking your heads at me. That was the only response that I got from anyone. Whoever I asked all told me the same thing and said, well, that's a past life blockage. They need to have past life regression to fix it.
Yeah, so this is
when it comes to that.
Oh, he's going to try and do it too. Yeah, no,
no, I'll just say one thing, right? How many times do you phone up the technical helpline when you've got a computer issue and they tell you to switch it off and on again? Yeah, now, that doesn't fix everything, does it?
No.
But I'll just say that. And let Chris deal with the rest of it.
So that I kind of want to link that back to divination, because to me it's no different in some ways. So what people tend to do is spend all that time looking, and that's exactly what past life regression will do. So that will put you back in that situation so you can look around it and learn more information. That's not going to remove the blockage, but that is going to make you aware of potentially where the fault is. So, you know, the typical people go with things like very mundane things like, I'm terrified of water. And then they go back and they go, oh, I drowned. Oh, that makes sense.
Literally, that was on here yesterday. I don't know who I can't remember who was interviewing. I think it was Catherine. And exactly what you've just said, somebody commented, sorry to interrupt you, but it's just literally, you just said exactly what someone said yesterday. I have no idea who it was now, but in the comments, they said exactly what you've just said. Oh, I'm afraid of water because I drowned in a past life. So literally, you know, word for word, that is what they said yesterday. So sorry, I had to interrupt you because I was like, I heard this yesterday and this was someone commenting.
But that's the sort of thing you normally get. So the mundane level is normally that. So it's somebody that comes back and has got some kind of fear or phobia. And then, you know, it turns out that through past life regression, because all that is essentially is a version of hypnotism that puts you in an altered state that allows you to view parts of past times. So, which is great. You get to walk around in a bit, you know, speaking French or wherever you've come from at that point. But they're none the wiser beyond that. So if it's something as simple as that, then that's fine. The sorts of blockages we're talking about is when, you know, they've made some kind of deal in a previous lifetime or a future lifetime that stops them allowed to. So there are certain types of gatekeeping where they've been told they're not allowed to, they've taken oath of silence about certain comments. And the second that they come to talk about something, the words are gone. Or, you know, they've taken...
Or they get stalked.
Yeah. Where,
so it can get sinister. It can get sinister, but it's rare. It's rare. And generally only when it comes to people that practice a lot of magic, because in order to change the structure of the universe on that level or interact with and cause that amount of devastation, you actually have to be tinkering with settings that the majority of people aren't going to have access to.
Yeah, which is why the majority of people fall into that kind of mundane category where they've got a fear of something, or they can't move forward because they've got attachment issues, but they're not attachment issues from this lifetime, that sort of thing. And those will all be to a certain extent solved by past life regression, I guess. And in fact, if you know what the problem is, you've got more chance of getting over it. We tend to get stuck with the ones that isn't enough. Where they've signed a contract in a previous lifetime to a particular deity or to a particular energy field, and then it's affecting their life in this time too. So that's the level of tinkering Liam's talking about, when something affects you over multiple lifetimes.
But it can be very mundane. The last mundane case I had was that it was a lady who actually doesn't live too far away from me. And she has had a life basically full of illness. As soon as one thing happens, then she has something else. And it seems like she's working through every possible illness, chronic condition that there is in the entirety of, you know, what humans can get. And normally when it comes to diagnosis, of course, people don't come to us and say normally, oh, there's something wrong with my past life, there's something wrong with that. They'll generally come and say, I want to do this, or this is happening to me, why? So it's up to us to kind of diagnose what the situation was. With her, it was a very, very interesting, because that was a past life issue, in that she was a he, and he was a doctor that was not particularly basically a sociopath. So he went through his entire career of not really caring about his patients, blah, 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 blah. And every single person, it seems like when we looked at life, always said this one thing of, if you had what I had, you treat me nicer, or you don't know what it's like, right? And if you think about having an entire lifetime full of people with pain, actual physical pain, and directing that pain, energetically speaking, towards this soul, that had a knock-on effect. And when we looked at addressing that, all of a sudden, you know, things started working out, and you know, there was a blockage unblocked, and then, you know, conditions started to get better and better and better. But the problem is, it's all in, you know, if you're like with anything, anyone that's been to a doctor can probably tell you when they've got a diagnosis wrong and they prescribe something, it can do more damage. You know, diagnosis is extremely important when it comes to tinkering with magic, and that's why we often structure the training that we, you know, we tend to try and, or I personally, I can't say Chris, but I think you'd probably agree, we try to push people to the point of, you know, if they're tinkering with that level of things, you need to become a doctor. So it's not a case of, you know, these Reiki courses or Diploma of Excellence courses on witchcraft and stuff like that, which might teach you first aid or the very basics. Normally there's a line drawn kind of in the sand, which we say, look, we recommend that if you're going over this line, you need to have a foundation in a little bit of everything. So we don't, that's generally the boundary of consultation work compared to mentorship, because consultation work is either, if we cross this line, we fix the problem for you, or if it's below that line, we know that it's going to be safe enough for you to fix that problem. Mentorship is when we get to that kind of level, we kind of say, well, we need to bring you up to speed and make sure that you've got the necessary training to get involved with that, because it's a bigger undertaking, but it's fun.
I've just Tasha said, aren't spells more so led by intention, though? Is a question she wants to know.
All about the intention. That's something that people say a lot.
That is said by a lot of people and a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different genres about a lot of different things. And Tasha's all new to all this type of stuff, so she's in the midst of trying to learn whatever she can.
The problem is it's defining what spell work is. That's where you get the problem, because spell work is a big umbrella term that combines a lot of other things. So when you look at different types of spells and different magical practices, they all work in different ways. So if you look back over the history of spells, what you're going to find, from spells from the Greeks or even some of the cunning folk from a couple of 100 years ago, they'll include, actual physiological things, herbal medicines, that kind of thing, psychological triggers and things like that incorporated in the spell, and just pure magic, essentially. So what the problem is when it comes to the type of spell you're working, all of these things, you're either incorporating all of them or one or two of them in. So when it comes to certain things such as herbal medicine, nowadays we don't call that spell work, because science understands how, the physiological effects that certain things have on the body. So intention doesn't matter. If I give you a certain potion, if I make a flying ointment for you or some ayahuasca, that's going to have, just never mind your intention, is going to have a physiological effect on the body. Back then it would have been called magic, because science wasn't in existence. But when it comes to the whole intention thing, intention isn't everything. What intention is understanding the beginning, middle, and end of the spell that you're working. So what are you trying to accomplish? How are you going to accomplish it? And how does it end? So really it's more of when you think of intention should be your plan. If it wasn't the case, of course, then when it comes to the whole intention thing, you wouldn't find people messing up things and triggering things without intention. So when people stumble upon and activate spells, or when people stumble upon and cause some kind of damage without any intention behind that, then you wouldn't have that kind of effect if it was all about the intention. But I understand that intention is an incredibly big part of spell work. And I just don't like it when people say it's everything.
And the lighter answer to that is people mix up the idea of intention with belief.
Yeah.
So they mess the two terms up, and actually you don't necessarily need to believe in something. You need to know what your clear goal is. And that's the bit that I normally use when I refer to intention, is normally that, you need an energy source, you need a focus point, and you need a desired result and an effect to prove that it's complete. And then part of intention is that kind of, if you reach, so I've got a new student at the moment, and she's amazing on the basis that she knows exactly what she wants. So where spells tend to go wrong a lot of the time is because they go, I would like this, or this, can please you bring me this? And it's not like that. What you need to make effective spell work, you need to demand. So I want this, I need this. This
is going to happen. Yeah.
And those are the ones that, and that's what what gets fluffy with the word intention. So what I would prefer you to use is kind of willpower, maybe, is a much more effective way of talking about desire. I want this to happen. I need this to happen. This must happen. Will get you much stronger results than, a prayer to a deity that says, please, if I'm deserving, put this in my life. That's a sort of petition. That's not spell work. That's petition
which
work.
gets confused.
So you're just making it plainly clear. This is what I want. This is what I want to happen. This
Yeah,
is, you know, rather than I set the intention that I'd like this to come forward to me or so on, because that's a common phrase that is used. I've got another question.
It's about the battery.
Go on.
It's Tasha again. So clearing a house, for example, and using the black salt in a skillet for, I hope I pronounced that correctly, for example, etc. It's the things you are using the spell. It's the things you are using the spell itself, rather than the things you're.
It's not like chemistry, okay? So this ingredient plus this ingredient has this reaction. So people look at spells and they look at the ingredients of spells, and normally things like Eye of Bat and Wing of, Wing of Bat and Eye of Newt, that kind of thing. Yeah, people get confused with that. And it's really murky in the fact that really technically what you're doing is, with spell work, if we're just talking about spell work, which is a form of magic, then you're talking about what you want to do. You're selecting a battery or creating a battery for that. Now, the difference between the petition side is that you're using an external force, a spirit. You're asking a spirit, can you do this for me? And it may look like a spell because you've got an altar and a petition paper, that kind of thing. But when you're talking about traditional spell work in terms of you're supplying the energy and stealing energy from other things, depending on what system of magic you're using, that spell will work a different way. So if we think of something like a candle spell, and I'll give you 3 ways of using a candle spell that will give you the same results, but they'll work differently. So if I wanted to do a candle spell for more money to come to me, I could say, okay, I'm going to light this candle to such and such spirit. This is an offering to you. Can you please give me more money? That's asking, that's petition. Okay. When you're talking about using the candle and charging it yourself and using it as a focal point to direct your will, then that's the energy coming from yourself. When you're talking about adding extra components to that spell, you're normally talking about mixing herbs in with the spell, that kind of thing. It goes back to traditional animism. So all of these things has energy themselves. They're all batteries. However, what you're doing then is you're selecting the right type of power source for what you're trying to do, which comes to the energy side of things. That's where people get confused because they rely on correspondences. And very often correspondences won't work for spirit petitions very often. And they certainly don't work particularly well when it comes to taking the energy of that plant, that thing, that crystal that you're using. Your crystals are one of those massive things that everyone has, or a lot of people have assigned meanings for crystals and assigned uses. Well, what you've got to do is you've got to walk into a supermarket and look at the aisle with empty containers, the Tupperware aisle, and you can look at that aisle and it's full of empty things. But all of those empty things you can look in, you can think, that's for pasta, that's for drink, that's for this, that's for that. That's kind of what crystals very much are like. The energy that is within a crystal, generally speaking, is quite weak when it comes to doing anything other than super simple forms of magic. So what you're really doing is you're thinking, that's a battery that is best suited for, storing a certain type of energy, which is where you get the idea of kind of charging crystals and that kind of thing. Yeah. So over the thousands of years, humans have assigned based on experience, such and such a crystal that tends to retain that type of energy the best. The problem is when you look in books, they don't explain that. So people in books say, the rose quartz crystal, that's for love, blah, 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 blah. And another thing that's also important, because I'll stop rambling after that, is the fact that just because something is used for, storing water, so just because this has got liquid in it, doesn't mean that I can't put rice in it. So when it comes to your rose quartz crystal, and that people tend to find that it reflects and absorbs quite a lot of lovey-dovey energy, we'll just call it that, doesn't mean that you can't bastardize that crystal and put something really sinisterly horrible in it. And that's the dangerous thing, because what we'll find with people like Chris that likes to curse rose quartz crystals and hide them in crystal shops, then you know, you may be letting yourself in for more than what you get, and a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. So really, that's why we choose this approach, is to say, well, this is how it works. Don't get too involved in the ingredients. Start back from scratch and then start adding things that you understand, not because a book says to add them. That's my rant over.
Very ranty today.
She said, I think I understand where you're coming from now, and thank you for clarifying. Mel says she loves my crystals. Jada, sounds interesting. I would definitely check out your website. Can I ask you to put the link on for your group and any other links that you've got, to pop them in the comments for us, please, so people know where to find you and where to learn from you and so on. I'm running out of time, so I just want to say thank you for joining me. Very much appreciate it. I'm sure people will continue to comment and want to contact you and learn more from you. So yeah, if you can put those links, I've put your website in, but if you've got any other links, like you said about your group and so on, if you can put them in the comments for me, there are people here that are interested and want to learn more from you.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
So thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone that has been watching, and join me next. I've got Mike Cavall. So please join me whilst I interview him, and thank you all again, and thank both of you.
No problem.
Thank you.